Hello, and thanks for joining us at the Dark Reading News Desk, broadcasting from Black Hat USA 2025 in Las Vegas. We are thrilled to welcome Andrzej Olchawa, offensive security researcher for VisionSpace, and Milenko Starcik, head of cybersecurity at VisionSpace, to talk about their new research, Burning, Trashing, Spacecraft Crashing, a collection of vulnerabilities that will end your space mission. A tongue twister of a name, but I love it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Tell me a bit about this research, which I understand concerns vulnerabilities that were found in some ground space, some ground level equipment, but also some software that's used up above as well.
Exactly. So what we were looking into is software that is used across missions. So usually you have on the ground a lot of infrastructure that is supporting a mission, and we were looking into that infrastructure software that is running on the ground and supporting the operations of an actual space mission. So stuff that is not just impacting maybe one spacecraft, but that could impact potentially dozens of spacecraft. And on the space side, our goal was the same, to look into frameworks. We looked specifically into one from NASA, which is very popular, the core flight system, used by dozens of missions. And we found some vulnerabilities in all of that, basically. And so that was the core of the research.
And then tell me a bit about the vulnerabilities. What were they, and how could they be exploited?
So there are different types of vulnerabilities. Some of them are easier and some of them are more difficult to exploit. What was surprising is that we have found a number of very easy vulnerabilities, like simple XSSs. But when we were developing exploits for them and were able to change those vulnerabilities, we were able to generate much higher impact on the space missions. In some cases, we were able to send arbitrary telecommands to spacecraft through the mission control system. In some cases, we were able to take over the whole control center. And in other cases, if you are able to actually send telecommands to spacecraft, you can get remote code execution at spacecraft directly.
Were these attached to certain vendors?
So we looked at a lot of software from NASA because they have simply the largest open source repositories. Okay. So we were looking at open source software exclusively, so we didn't do any closed source software review. And this is where we also see a bit of a dark spot still, because we were able to do quite a lot of research in the open source field. But the vast majority of software that is used in space systems on board or on ground is actually proprietary or behind the walls, basically. So it's very difficult to get into these systems and to actually get your hands on and to test them. And that's like a lot of the previous research that has been done was largely on like user equipment and stuff, where it's easy to get actually a unit, reverse engineer it, try to get access to it, and see what is inside and how you can break it. And this is very much decoupled from what we looked at, so at the heart of the mission, at the operations.
Got it. And if a threat actor was to take advantage of these vulnerabilities you mentioned some stuff already, but what could they do? What could they take advantage of? I mean, in like a perfect world where they could like fully exploit it, what would be the worst case scenario?
So it would be driven by the functionality of the spacecraft. It depends what the spacecraft is and what functionality comes with. If you can actually change trajectory of the spacecraft by firing some thrusters, that's what you would be able to do. So you can actually change the orbit of spacecraft. In some cases, if it's like a small satellite, CubeSat, you might compromise the telemetry. You might even try to break the whole spacecraft platform.
Are you disclosing this research at the show, or are you sort of doing like your technical deep dive here?
So we have accumulated around almost 40 CVEs over the last couple of years. We were following a responsible disclosure process. So we have prepared, once we find the vulnerabilities, we prepare the report. We send to the vendors, and then we work with them to fix them, the vulnerabilities. And then we publish our research. And then we submit to talks to conferences like Black Hat.
And then were the vulnerabilities, do you feel they were addressed for the most part, or some addressed, some not?
Most of them have been addressed very quickly. It was very easy to work with most of the vendors. Within a couple of days, we were getting feedback from them with the acknowledgements. And then next week, there was a patch available on the public repositories they are holding.
I want to ask you a bit about space and space adjacent sort of context as like an attack surface, whether it's ground technology or it's satellites or it's the software involved in either. Do you feel like this is an emerging, attack surface that maybe nation states will begin to take advantage of? Do you think it's still worth obviously researching and fixing, but more theoretical? What do you think of this space satellite field as an attack surface? And I would love to hear both of your thoughts on that.
It's definitely growing. So we've seen over the Cold War period, there was a pretty steady launch of satellites also for defense purposes, which were like highly classified and like for intelligence gathering and for telecommunications. It slowed down a bit around the 2000s, but then there has been around 2020, 2010, a stark increase in the number of satellites launched due to like constellations, for example, Starlink, but also OneWeb and other projects where they are building these mega constellations, and also other providers are catching up and launching more and more satellites. And so the attack surface is ever increasing. The systems are more connected. They are providing internet via satellite. Some of the systems might be controlled over the internet. So operators using VPN connections and stuff to basically control these spacecrafts. And use of cloud services, for example, AWS and also Microsoft also has services where you can actually control your spacecraft using their ground stations next to a data center. And then you have basically a cloud integration. And this, of course, comes with a lot of convenience, but also dramatically changes your attack surface.
And then, did you have any thoughts?
Yes, from the attack surface point of view, obviously it's no longer theoretical. Like Viasat hack is an excellent example where the adversaries didn't target the spacecraft directly, but actually the ground segment first, which is in the space system is usually the weakest link. So yeah, I think it's definitely growing, and I think we can expect more of similar cases in the future.
Yeah, so it's no longer theoretical. It used to be theoretical, and there used to be also some talks here at Black Hat about user, like for example, the Starlink dish was taken apart and reverse engineered and stuff like this. But this is no longer just theory. Actually, nation states are taking this equipment apart. They are developing exploits for them. They are developing malware targeting these systems, like with Viasat.
Now, I would imagine that from a nation state perspective or in that sort of battlefield, it would probably be more useful for espionage than kinetic attacks. Even if you could use it to disrupt a satellite, the stakes would be so high that maybe it would be, many wouldn't take advantage of that. Do you feel the same, or do you feel like people will start using these exploits in more kinetic fashion?
I don't think really that they want to go too much kinetic. It's very difficult to use them in a kinetic fashion. I mean, breaking a device is already kind of has a physical impact actually for the people using it. But it seems like there's still a threshold which people try not to cross. And there's like, for example, traditionally there have been anti-satellite weapons, which are like rockets, which you actually shoot at a satellite and it explodes and destroys the satellite. And like all big spacefaring nations have shown that capability. So the US first, then I think Russia, China, India, they've all demonstrated they can do this. But what Russia did was not destroying a Viasat satellite. They were hacking into the ground systems. And then only via attribution from what we saw here at a talk at Black Hat with the NSA, actually it was discovered who, like they did an attribution, of course, from what the purpose was. It was very obvious that it must have been the Russians because it was on the onset of the invasion of Ukraine. They did the day after. But actually pointing the finger at someone who did it is very difficult in cybersecurity. Always. Attribution is always a bit of a game of guessing.
Sure. And as we wrap up, I would love to hear just, final thought, any last takeaway on hearing about all these vulnerabilities involving, what sounds like very critical equipment. What would your final takeaway be from this research? Each of you.
Yeah, maybe I can just quickly start. So I think that, right, there's the saying that space is hard. So it's very hard to get something into space and also to sustain something there. But security for these space systems shouldn't be hard. there's a lot of best practices that are around and that are well known over the past decades and researched. And we think that we still need to see them applied to space systems.
Yeah, from our experience, I think what we have noticed is that the space systems, have definitely been tested from the operational standpoint, but it's obvious that they were not being tested from the security perspective, especially from the offensive security perspective. So they all work fine, unless someone is trying to on purpose break them.
Excellent. Andrzej, Milenko, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you sharing this research with me. My name is Alex Culafi here at the Dark Reading News Desk here at Black Hat USA 2025. Thank you very much for watching.